I guess there are 80 some odd here. It's a rough guesstimate. And not everybody has the facilities or the patience to host a gathering of this size. So we really, really appreciate your opening up your house and your yard and the kitchen and everything else.
You're entirely welcome.
Stand up, take a bow.
Yeah, stand up. And while we're giving thanks, I also need to express thanks to Merle LeDuc, Bob Lazier and his friend Betty, and Laura. What's Laura's last name? Hager.
Tiger.
Tiger. Well, whatever. Amelia's sister. She was fortunate to have her family pitch in and help. Many of you know that we have had some sadness in our family in the last week or so, and probably I wasn't on the ball enough to do what should be done, and I want to thank Amelia and Irma and Bernice for sort of keeping things running smoothly while I was tied up with other things. So let's give a thanks to those people I mentioned. That's all right. She wasn't the only one whose name was mentioned. She's tragic for the rest of them. I'm starting a basket down. We're not passing the hat today. We're passing the basket. You know, our funds go for the scholarships that are awarded annually to 2 Alloway residents who are seniors. And so the basket is coming. Dan, are you ready with the minutes from the last year's meeting?
What I would like to do, I'd like to ask Earl Buchanan, since he was the secretary at the last meeting, if he would be so kind as to read those minutes. And I do have a report then on another item.
All right, fine.
The annual Alloway Picnic was held on Sunday, July 9th, 1989. Artifacts of Alloway and Chris Davis's collection of Lions bottles. President Dan Legacy welcomed everyone to the 3rd annual reprised Alloway Picnic. He then asked John Rook to offer the invocation, followed by Erica Gantz leading the group in the Pledge of Allegiance. After dinner, the heads of household introduced the members of their families and chatted. There were 65 present, with some Allowayans from as far away as Arizona and the state of Washington. The hat was passed to defray the cost of the meat and for donations to the scholarship fund. Last year's secretary, Irma Rook, presented a very complete report of the Alloway Annual Picnic held Sunday, July 10th, 1988 at Toganonwood Farm. The report was well received and approved as read. Treasurer Amelia Ingalls presented the treasurer's report. $239 was collected at the 1988 picnic. The balance at the end of 1988 was $145.17. $156 was collected at this year's 1989 picnic, and the balance carried forward is $187.36. The report was approved as read. Noel McStay gave the scholarship committee report and read thank you notes from this year's recipients of the Alloway Community Awards, Ross Gantz and Julie Sapp. Amelia Ingalls reported for the historical committee and encouraged everyone to view the display of articles and pictures of Alloway from 1900 to 1989, including the new bridge opening ceremony. She also requested donations of old clippings or pictures of Alloway. Of particular interest would be pictures of the old Alloway School and William Hess, who was killed in World War II. President Dan Legacy announced that Walt and Amelia Ingalls had volunteered to host next year's picnic. The picnic will be Sunday, July 8, 1990 at 1 p.m. at Walton Amelia's home. The following slate of officers was nominated and elected for the 1990 annual picnic. President Ruth Wilk, Vice President Earl Buchanan, Secretary Daniel Legacy, Treasurer Amelia Ingalls, and the Historical and Scholarship Committees remain the same. Under new business, a few years ago, the William Hess Scholarship Awards changed to the Alloway Community Award. The committee recommended that the award be changed to be the Alloway Community Award in memory of William Hess, who died in battle in World War II. The motion was moved by Noel McStay, seconded by Dan Wolf, and carried. The land office building was moved from Alloway and dedicated in June at its new site in the historic village of Mumford. Bill Shram was crowned the 1989 Peppermint King in absentia by Ruth Wilk. Bill is a very successful, long-time Alloway farmer coming here from Michigan in 1934. President Dan again thanked everyone for coming, the Ganses for their gracious hospitality in hosting the picnic for the past 3 years, and the Ingalls for inviting us next year. Sherm Lake moved that the meeting be adjourned, seconded by Ruth Wilk, and carried. It was adjourned at 2:45 p.m. Ruth Wilk then introduced Chris Davis from Newark, who spoke and made a slide and artifact presentation on the Alloway connection in Peppermint. H.D. Hotchkiss, Alfred Hale, and DeWitt Parshall were most influential in the peppermint industry beginning about 1839. They made Lyons and Alloway the peppermint capital and internationally known for the quality of the peppermint. At one time, 90% of the farmers and 75% of the land in this area were devoted to peppermint. This excellent program ended at 3:30 p.m., but many stayed on to update old friendships.
Are there any additions or corrections to this report?
If they do, they have to make us.
If not, they stand approved as read. Amelia, would you like to give the treasurer's report?
All right. Balance forward, Hank Peter, July 9, 107.36. We collected $162 last year and paid out for rolls and feed and Mr. Davis $50. So that's $112. And then it was $299.36. Then we had interest in the bank was $15.89, which brought it to $315.25. And then we paid out the Lions Award, school awards for $100. So we have in the bank $215.25. So the balance is the bank. I'll give you this Earl after.
Goes to Dan.
Make her say it over.
Any additions or corrections to the treasurer's report? Okay. Does anyone have any bills that need to be paid? Earl, I understand you had some pictures made for us?
I had some made, but that, just a donation, I don't want anything.
Okay. We appreciate that very much. Oh, I talked about that.
Her teacher.
There will be a bill for a corsage, which we decided at a committee meeting to get for Ruth Bish, and carnations, which will be distributed later. And I don't know what that bill is because it's on my bill at Lions Floral along with others. So that'll be taken care of
I
later.
have one for the shopping guide already that I'll pay.
Good. Okay.
So I'll turn the bills to me.
All right. All right. You want to pay some other my bills too?
No.
Scholarship Committee, Irma and Nancy.
The recipients this year were Joe Sapp Jr. and Mike Nolan were both excellent recipients, and we received thank you notes from both of them.
Okay. And as a bit of information, both of them were contacted by me. Mike Nolan was here for a few minutes, about 11 o'clock, but he had, he's on his way to Rochester to take a plane to Florida. And Joe Sapp Jr. has, or the third, has a family picnic in Pulteneyville, so it was impossible for either one of them to attend this year. But Mike did make an effort and was over here for a few minutes this morning. Historical committee report. Amelia, Bernice, Fran, whoever. Irma?
Well, we're still working on our scrapbooks and pictures, and we ask anyone that has any old school pictures that you had when you were in the country school or that, or anything that has to do with Alloway, we'd love to have them to put in our scrapbook.
And this would be a good time to tell you that there's a lot of information on display in what used to be the old TV shop inside, and I'm sure Walt and Amelia would be more than happy for you to browse and look at the things that are on display after we finish with our meeting. This also might be a good time to tell you that a year ago, Gordon Gardner told me that he would be here to present his program on mills. Less than a week ago, I was notified that Gordon had to work. Xerox said, you work. And you know what happens when you work for somebody like that. You work. And so we do not have a program per se today, but I'm sure we're going to enjoy ourselves just visiting among each other's groups.
I don't know, but I understand that what probably is not up today. My information is that apparently he's gone to the hospital. He has some kind of an intestinal problem, so
Oh, because I talked with Shirley Monday.
this was probably Thursday or Friday I learned that. So if anybody wanted to drop him a
Do
note.
you know which hospital?
No, I'm not even sure of that. I think Newark Wayne, but I wouldn't guarantee it.
If some of you did not hear what John said, he's under the impression that Gordon is in the hospital with some kind of an intestinal problem. They are the ones that own the old mill and have built that new house there. They moved in last February, March, something like that. He presented a program for DAR in February. It was right after that. I think it was the end of February, beginning of March, that they finalized the move. So if any of you are so inclined, it wouldn't do any harm to send Gordon a card. Send it to the house here, and if he's not there or back home yet, I'm sure Shirley would take it to the hospital.
Ruth, if anybody would be interested in seeing the dedication of the Alloway Bridge, I have it on video inside, if anybody would be interested.
Good.
They can come in and see that.
I can't hear all that, you're with us, Dan.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
How many of you are aware of what's going to happen in Lyons the first weekend in August? Peppermint Days. We had a committee meeting in April. The officers and the new officers and the former officers, and we were appraised of the situation that there is going to be a Peppermint Days weekend. Doing some checking around, we have more or less decided that Alloway will have an exhibit of some kind. Am I not right, girls?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We had a display last year when Wayne County had their bicentennial in the library, but this time I guess we'll have it in the park. So if anybody has any memorabilia for that, please let us know.
Who's that committee?
It's our historical committee, I think. Historical committee.
Well, yeah, just a day or two ago, I was mowing pasture down along the outlet, and I mowed into a huge patch of peppermint. I know that it's been there ever since I've owned the place. If somebody wants to go down there and get a sample, I would surmise that it's still a survival of that original planting.
Great.
And I think sometimes it can be found right over on Glenn's place along the ditch there, because they were still raising it there about 1900.
We had a lot of peppermint on the farm. So,
Elmer, was that down by
Well,
the old
it's
farm?
Yeah, yeah.
You have to go down the lane
It's got a
to,
man's Alloway in there, way back one.
you get down in there along the river, there's a fence. You just walk up along that fence, you get into that schoolhouse from it, you smell it. There's probably a quarter of an acre there, just solid. Out that wall.
Wow. Earl has offered to go down and take a photograph of this spot. You and who?
I said it was Sue that made the volunteer.
I volunteer for everything.
Okay, good, good.
Works great.
Okay. So I hope that many of you will come to the park on the 4th of August and look at our display as well as the other displays and activities that will be there.
I forgot about the activities.
I understand from talking with Catalina, who is town historian,
Right.
good, that she would sort of like to have this an annual thing, which I think is great. Palmyra has Canal Towns, Phelps has
Sauerkraut. But
sauerkraut.
you know what? It's the same week.
So maybe this can be a up and coming thing.
We need help with that too. Anybody need help with the day?
Okay,
Government days.
got that written down, Dan? He's offered to help.
No, we need help with the day, helping out. I'm going to be there. One of the things that we're going to have is some music on a barge. The DOT is especially equipping a barge with railings, and we're going to have. We know we got the Golden Eagle String Band coming, and possibly having a hammer dulcimer there. And I've heard the Golden Eagle String Band. They play every old canal song you ever heard with fiddles and banjos and everything, and they're going to be real good. And if this works out, we want to have this barge to float to all the communities and have for music, and hopefully the jazz band will be there. Noel, can you have some influence there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This event is co-sponsored by Erie and the American Cancer Society, and I understand that on Sunday, the Cancer Society is going to have maybe country and western music and a chicken barbecue. Saturday will be the days for the various activities. Am I right?
That's right.
Okay. It has been requested that after the business meeting, before we disperse, that we get in groups of several families and have some pictures taken for more or less a composite. Dan is going to take some pictures, and well, you don't see him. Mr. Santelli down there. So, Tony.
This is something new this year, but what we'd like to do is, rather than try and take a group picture of the entire group, which is very large, break down into maybe several families at a time. I have a sign that says 1990 Alloway Picnic. We're going to put it in front of you so that we can make a record of those who did attend this year's picnic. So please don't wander off. I'll try and get started here just as soon as the meeting is ended. Thank you.
Okay. Earl, would you like to take charge of the carnations? Bill, will you bring the carnations down here, please?
I like the way you said yes. She's ready.
In many civilizations throughout the world, the oldest generation is highly venerated. However, in the United States, for the most part, we're pretty much youth-oriented. But here in Alloway, that's not the case. As you get older, I think that you have to stay home a little more, you don't get out as much, you begin to feel like you're forgotten, and that no one's interested in you. And again, here in Alloway, I want to assure you that's not the case. And so the committee wanted to recognize our older generation today. They wanted to thank you for your wisdom, for the heritage you have given us, and just for being you. And so we're going to present some carnations to the older generation today, and the way I'd like to do it is that some of you are so youthful looking, we're not sure if you're 80 or not. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to call it by ages, and I hope that someone will either introduce that person that's here, or if you have part of your family in Alloway that's not here today, then we'll see that they get the carnation. I would appreciate it if you'd let us know. I think about the oldest living member that we have right now is Ruth Bish, who I believe is 98.
98, Catherine. She was 98 in January.
And as I said, we have a bouquet for her. Are you going to?
We have a corsage for her. We had hoped that she would be here, but she had a very, very busy day yesterday with a family gathering. So after this meeting is over with, I'm going to take the corsage to her. I think it will have more meaning that way than if we send it home with her daughter, Catherine. So I'll see you at home later. Not to try to disown you or anything, but.
She went to take a nap and she's expecting you later, Ruth.
Good, okay.
Well, what I'd like to do, and Tony, if you and, well, perhaps you, as these people are acknowledged or stand, I'm going to ask Ruth to give the carnation to them, and I'd like for you to be sure and get a picture of them. And I'd like to start with, is there anyone here over 90?
Yes.
I know of one. Would you like to introduce them?
My father-in-law's brother George, who is sitting over there with Bill, will be 93 in September. He has been living over with Gramps since Christmas time.
We're going to take a little time so we can get a picture of each one. This is really quite a worthy event. Is there anyone here over 85?
Considerable. You're over 80. Over 85?
Okay.
I'm gonna be 90 pretty quick.
He's almost 90.
Wes Reynolds, okay. Do you want to present a flower to him?
Whoops.
Well, no vase goes with that?
Thanks. And I think Mrs. King, is that Mrs. King down here?
Grace?
I'm gonna be 90. Yeah. Too damn quick.
Wes says he's going to be 90 pretty damn quick.
Grace, how old are you? 87. 87.
Grace King, 87. Any others? Okay, let's go for 80 and above.
So glad you came today.
George Jekyll? Is the one who gave the $100,000 to the school, provided they build some kind of a middle school. This is Mrs. Black. Thank you very much. George Jekyll?
So glad you came, George.
Thank you.
Right across, there's one here. Right here.
I don't know.
Mildred Lundy.
Mildred Lundy?
Mildred Ingalls Lundy.
Mildred Ingalls Lundy.
Right here. I got walls over here yet. Oh. you're here with us.
Walt Ingalls.
Thank you so much for this. Just give him a big kiss.
Now, is there anybody I've missed? If you have a relative in Alloway who is over 80, if you would stand up and tell us, we'll be glad to see that they get a carnation. Anyone?
Marion, are you 80?
Oh, we missed one.
My neighbor.
Marion Giese.
And I'd be proud of it.
I'm sure that they're looking down from heaven today and having a real smile that we are recognizing them. And I think Ruth wanted to say something about that and perhaps have one moment of silence for those who are not here today.
Angie Sapp died a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure you all know my father-in-law died a week ago yesterday. That was awfully hard for me in many respects because at the committee meeting in April, we decided that Henry Wilk was going to be crowned Peppermint King this year. Just a few days before he died, I knew that he was not going to be around. So the Tuesday night before he died, I said to him, Gramps, do you remember the Alloway Picnic last year? And he said, yes. And I said, do you remember Dan Legacy was crowned Peppermint King? He said, yes. And I said, guess who's to be crowned Peppermint King this year? He says, I don't know. And I said, you are. He says, no. And I said, I'm not fooling you. He says, well, I won't be there. And I said, but nobody knows for sure. And he had several visitors that evening, and I asked him with each visitor that came, can you tell us what's going to happen at the Alloway Picnic? And he said, I'm going to be crowned king. And Bill was the last one in that evening, and when I asked him to tell Bill, he says, I'm going to be king crowned. And Bill misunderstood him, and he said, King Kong. Gramps said no. So he knew what was going to take place. We had ordered 12 carnations, and I had one red one placed in his hand, the one that he would have received had he been here today. So that's my tale of whatever.
Well, let's just have a moment of silence to remember them and the others who have contributed so much to Alloway. Amen. Thank you.
When we had our committee meeting in April, I was supposed to have gotten some biographical information around for Gramps, and Earl was going to make the presentation. Most of you know that he was 90 years old last December. He was born in the town of Manchester. He had 2 sons. He left 9 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. When we gathered for the funeral Tuesday afternoon, the minister came and asked if Mark Decracker could have a few minutes to say something. And of course, we said that was fine. And I think in many respects what Mark said sums up Henry's life. And I've asked Mark to share his comments with us. Would you do so at this time, Mark?
Yes. I clearly remember the first day I met Henry. It was back in the spring of 1982. I was amazed at how hard he was working. He was busy building a dining room hutch. I was wondering where he got all his energy from. Most people his age have long retired or are in nursing homes. I soon learned Henry didn't know the meaning of growing old or boredom. He occupied his time gardening and building. Henry has built many homes over the years. It is only now in his 80s that he builds the pieces that furnish these homes. Henry loved working in his shop. There were many days I went over to see him, asking Lena where he was. She'd say, "Oh, he's down in the workshop building something. I hardly see him, he's down there so much." Lena used to worry about Henry working by himself, but that was where Henry belonged, amongst the sanders, the planers, the saws and hammers. He was always so proud of the things he had made, reminding me of a young boy bringing home his first art project from school. He would inadvertently show me everything he had built, chuckling as he described every piece. Speaking of chuckling, I never remember Henry upset or depressed. He had such a positive outlook on life. As a neighbor, you will never meet a better man. One day when I was looking for a place to have a small garden, Henry, without hesitation, shared a piece of his garden with me. It was during these times that I became very close to Henry. He would always start off each day talking about the weather or how much the corn had grown in the last week. Some of my favorite times were the times I shared dinner or lunch with Lena and Henry. It was as if I had gone back in time hearing those tales of growing up. He once told me of the time he worked as a hoagie on the old Erie Canal, walking from Port Gibson to Clyde in one day. That time he picked 150 bushel of apples. Henry's other love besides building was gardening. I believe to this day that's where he got his strength from. When I first met Henry, he had over a 2-acre garden. He would take his vegetables to the farmer's market in Lyons every Saturday morning. He was such a fixture in the Lyons at the farmer's market. If the farmer's market had a grand marshal, it would be Henry. Henry could be seen out there on the hottest of days weeding and hoeing his garden, although I never did see a weed. Whereas his gardens got smaller over the last few years, he never put the hoe away. Just a couple weeks ago, I saw him out hoeing his corn. I guess I thought I'd never see the day when Henry put his hoe away and the hammer stopped pounding.
Thanks, Mark.
I'd like for us to go around the table and one person from a family introduce yourself and your family members, and maybe just very briefly tell what your connection with the Alloway community is. And we'll start with Mr. Buchanan.
This is my wife Sue. This is our daughter Debbie from Washougal, Washington. Our connection with Alloway is we lived up atop the hill there for many, many years and didn't move to Lyons until about 1983. So our heart's still in Alloway.
Now, George, do you want to introduce your
I'm probably the best baseball player that ever grew up in Thompson State. My oldest sister Ethel Black, my wife Ruth, my youngest sister Dorothy, Marion, and Francis, Mary Miller and Francis Gibbs. And my brothers, 2 brothers couldn't be here with us today too. We've enjoyed being here as a family.
That's what, 5 of the Gakos?
Yeah.
That's great.
He forgot to say we lived on the other side of the tracks.
Maybe we're on the other side of the tracks here.
Depends on which side you live.
Suburbs of Alloway. I thought it was a suburb of Alloway.
Oh, that's right. Where's Noel?
I'd like to say that the farm on which we lived over in Dublin until I was 7 years old, my father had a distillery on it, and we raised peppermint and wormwood. And I still have some of the demijohns that they put apart. Well, they took it down to the distillery room, and they filled these demijohns.
Great.
I can remember going down with my dad and lighted lantern and filling the demijohns before we all went to bed.
We're so glad you came today. Noel?
I'm Noel McStay, and my wife Jane, and Jane's mom, Margaret Daly, recently moved to Alloway from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, by way of Oswego, New York, where she's originally from. My son Mark, and we happened to come with last year's Peppermint King, Mr. Schramm. And we've been in Alloway since 1983. When the Buchanans moved out, they said we could move in. That's the only way we could move in if they had to leave. But we own a home that is in the woods across from where Earl and Sue used to live.
Bill, do you want to say anything? Do you want to say anything?
Well, I'm not very much in talking, but
You can stay seated.
we came to Alloway. I and my wife, we came to Alloway in 1943, and I farmed it there on top of south of Alloway all these years, and now my son has taken over, who is Bernard Schramm, and Christine Schramm, that's my granddaughter. Everybody knows her. And that's about all I got to say.
We're glad you came.
Well, this is my daughter Mary and my grandson Daniel. We have been Alloway people for 40 years. I lived in the big house above where Mr. Gardner built his home, and that's where I grew up, in the big house, which was the Killick homestead. And then when I married, we moved up next to where Nancy and Dan Wolf lived, and I lived there 25 years. I live in Lyons in the village now, but Alloway will always be home.
Sharon?
Chair legs here. I don't know, I'm allergic to one of these or not.
No, you're not allergic to it.
I think everybody knows who I am anyway, but Sherm Lake and my wife Fran. She says I have to tell you we arrived here in 1919. I did. She came a little later from Wallington, if you know where that is. I guess probably her father used to say we used to be Farm Bureau, Home Bureau, and Matrimonial Bureau was the 4-H in Wayne County, and she happened to be the first president of Wayne County 4-H. That's where I met her, and ended up over here in Alloway. Yeah, so I guess I'm one of the originals, and I've been here all my life, and a pleasure to work and know all the people here, and nice to have people come from Washington and Honeoye and all these other places. I think Oklahoma even one man comes from there.
Could be.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to know everybody in Alloway.
Dorothy?
I'm Dorothy Sealing, and we've had a home in Pleasant Valley since 1954. Pleasant Valley Road over here, out in the country near Mark. And right now I'm living alone. My daughter's in England, and the other kids are all grown up and gone.
Glad you came, Dorothy.
Okay.
I'm Catherine Eman, and I think I've lived in Alloway probably all of my life, or most of my life. Born and brought up on 14 here. Went to school for, I guess, till the 4th grade, and then they closed it, and I had to go into Lyons to school. I'm happy to be an Alloway resident. It's a very nice place to live.
Mr. Rice?
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm Earl Rice. I can't hardly stand up. I drank so much of that lemonade. In 46, we bought the Suckle House down the road here, and we were there 32 years. And then we moved into Gristmill in Lyons. This is my wife, Bernice, busy bee, I call her. I never know where to find her. And she's busy all the time. Then my son and his wife from Chicago, Rob, and we love Alloway, we'll always will.
And then we have Bernice's brother.
There we go.
I'm Bob Tyler, and this is my wife Kathleen, and we lived on the outskirts of Alloway, I guess over on Pleasant Valley Road. I was a farmer all my life up until 1982 when we moved to Newark on East Avenue. So we've always enjoyed coming to the Alloway picnics and being a part of the group.
Tony? That's right. Can't miss ya. No.
My name is Tony Santelli. This is my wife Evelyn. We live in Newark, an annex of Alloway.
In case you don't know, that's Santelli Studios. Introduce.
Yeah, this is my mother, Grace King. And I'm Sheldon King. We live 2 houses down from Amelia and Walter, who have been my mother's good neighbors for 28 years. And I am a reasonably newcomer to this area, and so attending something like this is a little bit of a different for me.
But we're glad you came, Sheldon.
Thank you.
I'm Eunice Barnes, my husband Lyle. We're fairly recent additions to the community of Alloway. We bought the Charles Ennis house in 1966, but we have enjoyed your picnics.
I wonder if Walter would rather tell about the Ingalls. I don't know.
No, you do it. You tell about yourself, and we'll let Walt tell about himself. You don't have to stand up if you don't want to.
I'm Marion Ingalls, D.C., and my sister from Bradenton, Florida, Mildred Lundy, comes and stays with me in the summer over on 65 Leach Road. And we were brought up near Thompson Station, just north of the Acres. Went to school together, country school. We're sisters, of course, of Walter.
Walt's a brother. Thank you. Do either of you want to say anything? John?
I'm John Gibbon. With very few exceptions, I guess, I'm probably one of the most recent additions to Alloway. We bought the old Al Westfall's old place, formerly known as Riverlawn, when he owned it, in North Alloway. Far north as you can get, I guess, in Alloway. And this is my wife, Sherry. And these are our daughters, Michelle and Kim Verstrain.
Thanks, John.
Give it to my kinfolk over here.
Give it to your kinfolk.
Holy smokes. Well, give it to Wes. He's got more. Give Wes.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you got to tell us who you are. It's going on videotape.
I'm known as Butch Reynolds. We moved here in 1903 or 4 from Dublin, not Ireland. Long time ago, anyway.
And the house he lived in was down here, just before the corner, and it was torn down.
Next to the land office.
Oh, boy. All right. Let's see. Walt came from out north of Newark in 1912. His family moved over. The Ingalls lived on one side of the track, and the Ingalls lived on the other side of the track. That's what separated them. Then, right? All right. Then him and George Ingalls bought the Alloway store in about 1938. And so they ran the store, I think, 16 years there the first time. Well, I was born in Alloway in the old homestead down there. And I just checked with my brother, and that would have been, they would lived there 70, because Bob is 74, so it was 74 years ago. They had moved there in the old homestead around the Four Corners down there in Alloway. I was born in Alloway in 1921. I was baptized in the Alloway Chapel. And I understand there was 9 of us all baptized at once in the Alloway Chapel. There was 10 of us kids. Down in front of Buddy Friend's house, right on the corner. There's pictures of it inside. And this is where's my brother Bob? Bob? He went in the house. My brother Bob, he just went in the house. And he's from Sapulpa, Oklahoma, outside of Tulsa. And he came all the way here to be with us for this picnic. And this is my sister Laura, and she lives in York. This is Laura Uzer Taggart. She lives in York, and she's older than I am. I'm the baby girl. And Bob went into the service, him and Bill Hess went into the service together from Alloway.
Same day.
The same day. And I got out of school to go see the two boys off at the railroad. And they were both served overseas. And of course, Bill never came back. Bill came back, but he then went back again and never came back again. But he told us he would never come back when he left the last time. This is my brother-in-law. This is my sister's husband, Merle LeDuc. And he's from Rochester, and he comes quite frequently and visits us. And the lady that helped us so much in the kitchen is my brother Bob's friend from Sapulpa, Oklahoma. She came back, Betty. So I guess that is it.
But I'm the smartest.
She's the oldest and smartest.
I had to get
I'm Bill, and this is Elva Fedor, my wife, and our connection with Alloway is the fact that she was born here at the Pulse place, just across the road there near the antique shop. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you.
Nice to have you.
Who's going to do the honors here?
I'm Dan Wolf, and this is my wife Nancy and our two sons, John and David. I guess probably the first Alloway picnic I came to would have been about 20 years ago, right here, when it was on the 4th of July in the evening. Pleasure to be here.
I'm John Rook, my mother Irma, wife Sandy, daughter Sarah, daughter Alexandra, and I think Alexandra might be the youngest, and sister Mary. No, I didn't forget Mary. Stand up there. Grandpa Rook, I had to ask Irma, I wasn't sure the day. Grandpa Rook moved into the house on the hill 1910 approximately, and then Dad and Mom moved in 1944. 3 out of the 4 of the kids, Mary, Phyllis, Marge, and myself, were born at the farm. Some of my fondest memories of Alloway were playing with Rob and Randy and running through, I think, all the acres around here. Rod and Gun Club 4th of July picnics, which were probably the best memories in terms of you had to go to the Rod and Gun Club on July 4th and wanted to. And I think just the spirit of the community. The only other comment, and I think of it every time I come in Leach Road, the corner of Leach Road and Alloway Road, that view looking over Alloway and the hills and the drumlins still, of all the places I've been in the world, is one of the nicest. So it's so good to be here and have everybody here. We have a son. Thank you. Sarah reminded me I do have a son. We have a son, Josh. Very good. He isn't here today, but Josh is 10. So thank you, Sarah.
I'm Dan Legacy. This is my mother, Winnie Legacy, who lives in the suburb of Lyons, has all her life. This is my wife, Sue. She was born and brought up south of Alloway, south of the Yakel place. After we were married, we moved to Alloway in 1973 and lived in the Rook homestead for a couple of years until we built a house on Thompson Station Road in 1976, and we've lived very happily there ever since. We have a daughter who's now with us today. She's a very lucky girl. She's the AFS exchange student to Spain, so she's in Spain this summer.
You want to introduce them? They can do it themselves. Good.
They may be 80, but they don't look like it.
That's right. I'll agree with you.
I'm Floyd Doherty. We live up on the old Rankert farm on Thompson Station Road. This is my dear wife, Pauline, my granddaughter, Sue, and our crops have grown good in this surrounding territory here, and so is our family. I'm the grandfather of 5 wonderful granddaughters.
Six.
6. That's right, 6. Wow. See how things grow? And we have 5 great-grandchildren. And I can't think of a better place to live than around the vicinity of Alloway here. I thank you very much. You gonna talk?
I'm Bud Friend. I was born here in Alloway. My father was a village blacksmith, and we live in the homestead down by the river there, the stone blacksmith shop and cobblestone house. Lived there all my life. My wife and I just recently celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary there. So we have 2 children who are both grown, and one lives out in Wolcott, and Jim just lives over at Thompson Station. Yep.
Well, maybe I better stop right here. I don't need to tell you who I am. Everybody knows me, I guess. My son, Bill, and my husband's uncle, my uncle, George Wilk, and Chris Lauster, who lives around the corner. He's been with my boys ever since school days. I have a daughter, Barb, who's in New York City, working and living, and a son, Jim, who is married and lives in Newark. Who's going to talk here?
I probably shouldn't even say anything. They're talking about across the tracks and this and that. I'm even out of the county. And I live on County Road 6 over here. When our family was growing up, Alloway was the big shopping metropolis, grocery store. Cleve Friend shot our horses. Killicks handled our wheat crops, so we do have some connection with Alloway. And this is my wife,
What's her name?
Arletta.
I'm Pearl Fisk. I've always wanted to come here, but I've never been able to come to the picnic. There's always something going on. And I live down here on 14. I moved there in 1936. And now I live in Dublin. That's past Thompson Station.
Didn't my father-in-law do work for you?
Yes, oh yes. We was over there a lot. He built our barn when the barn burnt.
I thought so.
Oh yes. Remember he come running like he always does. He just would run.
He never walked.
Never walked. No, he always did. And I used to come over there a lot too when you were there. No, so I enjoy it very much
Well,
to
we're
see
glad
everybody.
you came. Mark, you gotta get yourself in there too.
Okay, Diane. I'm Mark Decracker, and my wife and kids are wandering out in the outskirts out there. Don't be embarrassed. Come on in. And we've been living in the Jackson Schoolhouse since 1962, or 82. I'm sorry. Isabel's trying to focus at the same time. Isabel, we bought it from Isabel and Rice, and I'd like to know if, well, first of all, I'll introduce, here's Colleen wandering up here. And Jessica, you want to raise your hand? And it's Diane, and I'd like to know if anybody here went to school in the schoolhouse. Oh, okay, great. As I like to talk to everybody individually about their experiences at the school. Oh, okay. Thank you. Back to Ruth.
And I think we've got one over here that wasn't sitting down when we started.
Well, I'm Linda Hedrick, and I think we are the newest residents of Alloway since last Saturday. We moved into Irma Rook's house over there, and my husband Lee has baby Amy over there and our son Brad, and I've always felt like I've been a part of Alloway because I spent half my life at Buchanan's or the Hills up on the hill, and I was told by Margie Hill that I finally got some class and moved to Alloway a couple of weeks ago, so we're just real happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Have I missed anyone? No, I got him. Okay. I think we need to decide what we're going to do about next year. Okay. If we hold to the same date and time as we did this year, if my calculations are correct, it will be Sunday, July 7th. Some people have said the second Sunday in July is not any good for them, so maybe those that have conflicts on the second Sunday will be available on the first Sunday next year. Do we have a volunteer for a place?
You'll come here.
Do we want to take that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Amelia, you may be sorry.
Well, we had a good team this year, so things worked out fine.
All right, now as far as I am able to ascertain, the only business that needs to be transacted yet is the election of the officers for next year. Is there any other business that anyone knows of besides that?
Oh, I would like, I was going to bring up about the Four Corners and Alloway. Is a very dangerous place. We've had a lot of accidents there. And I was wondering if we couldn't get together and get the Department of Transportation to do something about either put a flasher light or something on that four corner. Because they're going to wait till somebody gets killed there and then they'll do something. But I hate to see that. And we've had an awful lot of accidents in the last 5 or 6 years there. And I know when you go across that corner, if you're walking, you don't walk, you run, because you never know who's coming over by the store. They come so fast, and also I worry about Sherman Lake with his tractors and his wagons going across there. When they have to go from one farm to another, it's dangerous. And I was just wondering if anybody has any output on that and what we can do about it.
If anybody has any thoughts or ideas or suggestions, let any of us know and we'll follow through. I'm looking at the tent and I forgot to thank Dwayne Gantz for supplying the tent for us. Dwayne was here bright and early this morning and put it up, and it makes it much more comfortable with the tent than without the tent. So if you see Dwayne, you can tell him that you appreciated his effort and the use of his tent. Any other business before the election of officers? I have a note that was handed me. Butch Reynolds has the oldest Alloway book with him, and he would love to show it to you. He will be in the house afterwards, so. Okay. What do we want to do about officers for next year?
I'd like to make a motion that we reinstate the same slate of officers. They did a great job like that.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made by Earl Rice, seconded by Noel McStay, that the same slate of officers continue for another year. Any discussion?
Move the secretary cast a single ballot.
Secretary? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. Have a good year, and we'll see this group and more next year. Yes, ma'am.
I've got a question. How long have you been having these picnics?
When was the first Alloway picnic? It was pre-World War II, wasn't it?
It was before, but I can remember when I was little, I used to go up to Rook's farm.
First one they had was over at school.
We used to have picnics up there.
I think that when the boys came home from the war, that's when a lot of these picnics started.
Because your father and mother used to have around the wartime. Well, it was around the wartime because we used to send boxes to all the servicemen.
I got one question I'd like to ask. The honor roll that was in front of us.
What happened to it? I really don't know. It might have been put down in the basement and got lost in the shuffle. I don't know what happened to the honor roll anymore. I can't remember either.
Dan, you said earlier you had something else, and I forgot it.
It was covered, but I would like to make the announcement that before people start wandering off, we would like to get those pictures. And if anyone is asked to leave for another engagement or anything, I will try and take those pictures first so that they can leave right away.
But you can stay as long as you want to. We got still food. And visit.
All right, there were two things I wanted to remind you. One, Dan just covered. The other is that there is a display of quite a bit of memorabilia in the house for those of you who are interested. Also, I think Dan and his crew that was responsible for getting the tables and chairs might appreciate a little bit of help in getting them back to where they belong. Right, Dan?
Yes, and I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the committee. Thank you to Dwayne Gantz for the use of the tent, as we said before, but also to the Masonic Lodge for the use of these tables and chairs today. And thank you to the committee for helping to bring them here, and hopefully you'll have your help to take them back.
Secretary, would you send a note of thanks to the Masonic Lodge and to Dwayne Gantz?
Done. Consider it done.
Thanks.
Ruth, do they have any official record? I remember the first 2 or 3 were it was up at Rook's home.
How
Picnic.
far back do the records go? How?
To the best of my knowledge.
All right. Oh, Wes said the first picnics were in the schoolyard.
We're across it, yeah. Way back over 50 years.
Well, I've been married 48 years, and Fred says picnics were going before we were married. So I remember being up to Rook's house at least 2 or maybe 3 years.
The first ones I remember were at the Rod and Gun Club and down behind the store.
Yeah, that was, we had them way before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We had them before the World War.
How far back do your records go, Dan?
When we first moved to Alloway in the early 70s, I believe at that time Fred Musetta Tinney were very active with this group. And at that time they turned records of the picnics over to the Wayne County Historical Society or Museum, I'm not sure which. My wife and I have tried several times since to obtain those records, but we can't seem to find them. They can't seem to find them at the museum. We do have in our possession now, though, records that go back to late 60s, I think.
Again, thanks everybody for coming, and the meeting is adjourned.